but as far as being a good representation of the medium, good God, that is pretentious. We should name this segment Guys Smell Their Own Farts, about the thoughts on video games. Good Lord. That's nice.
I just blew out my speaker with that. I can see it.
Yeah, there was
on
some
the
clipping
there.
going on when you were doing it the last time.
Hold on, I'll do it quieter this time.
Okay.
Yeah, nice mid-range on that one. Perfect. Nailed it.
That's very good. We're experimenting with introduction sounds and songs.
Yeah, I used the Alexandros technique to control the flow of my air.
And I sat here and listened to it.
Yeah, all the
that was my
nerds
contribution to that part.
Crucial.
I was racking my brain trying to think of an intro for this one, but as it turns out, all I can think about is The Last of Us, which isn't particularly funny.
No, it's just it's a lot of sadness. It's
not a lot of comedy gold in that game, and that's all I've been playing. So it's just in my mind, in my body.
Yeah, it's like crushing up sadness and despair and snorting it up your nose.
Yeah, it's what the world needed right now. Was The Last of Us 2. It came out at the perfect time.
I think it's a good lesson in things could be worse, right? We haven't hit bottom yet.
Haven't hit bottom yet. Don't worry, guys. Look at this. Doesn't this make you feel better?
America 2020. We haven't
Doesn't
hit
it
bottom
look good
yet.
Over here? Oh my God. Not a lot of goofs. However, we're gonna get some goofs here. There's gonna be a laugh or two. I hope. I pray.
That's the plan.
Or we're gonna cancel a podcast. If I don't get one laugh out of the audience member,
Garen,
it might be Garen. But if I don't get a laugh out of this person, episode 20 will be our final episode.
So is this a hypothetical person or a real person you're thinking about? Who is this person?
Well, you see, I always have a chair in the studio here to represent the audience, and I'm talking to them.
So it's you.
No, it's a different chair. It's an empty chair.
But you fill that chair with your own psyche because there's no one else in the room.
With my astral projection of the audience. Yeah.
Very, very interesting, Chase. Very interesting thoughts this session.
It's what makes our podcast so good. So good.
I watched Joker over the weekend, and that reminds me of that movie.
I didn't see this one.
It's on HBO right now. You should give it a look. Also, something you probably shouldn't watch right after playing The Last of Us, though.
Yeah, I'm going to need to play like 10 hours of Animal Crossing. I'm going to speed run Katamari Damacy, every one of them.
So is Animal Crossing pretty much just like video game Narcan?
Kind of. It does kind of chill you out. So I do have to like get a bunch of that to sort of revive myself from the Last of Us induced sad pit.
Sad, and for me, heart palpitations because it's just so tense the whole time.
Yeah. Hey, let's say the name of our podcast. It's Video Game Podtimism. It is the Optimists video game variety show where two best friends just wait, what's the rest of it? Two best friends talk about the wonderful world of gaming. God damn. Just stumbling through this one.
You couldn't say the real name of the podcast and do the tagline because you're just filled with such sadness from The Last of Us.
Welcome to Video Game Last of Us 2. It's the post-apocalyptic podcast about video games specifically and only The Last of Us 2. I'm your host, Ellie.
And I'm your host, Mr. Clicker.
Mr. Clicker, man. Good morning to you.
Good morning to you as well, sir.
You speak very good English for having like a mushroom for a throat.
Yeah, most of my compatriots, they do that just for the scares. We are very fluent and verbose. We're very deep intellectuals.
Yeah.
And you should feel really bad about killing us because we're just, whenever we screech out, we're just looking for a friend.
I hear that, yeah.
People are scared of our mushroom heads.
Yeah, I mean, they are quite frightening.
Mushroom heads. So is The Last of Us just like, is it Mario, just like post-apocalyptic realistic version?
Yeah, that has to be the pitch, right?
So is Mario just someone who got infected with the cordyceps fungus, and his mind is just what he thinks is happening, but every time he hits a brick, he's just actually eating somebody?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
All video games are awful.
It's a me. Body horror.
Body horror. Yeah,
There's a lot of it in there.
That's him.
Okay, so other than the obvious one, have you been playing any video games, David?
It's only been The Last of Us Part 2.
Yeah, that's pretty much it, huh?
Quite literally. I can't take myself away from it. It's like, it's just hitting myself is fun at this point.
It is a little weird that it's not a particularly easy game to play, but I do keep doing it to myself.
The gameplay is just so good, I think is what it is. Like, it's really, really tight gameplay. And
we'll get to this. This is pretty much our show today. It's just going to be The Last of Us 2.
I've just been playing The Last of Us Part 2. I spent my whole weekend playing it when I wasn't doing like errands or working out.
Yeah.
I come home and I play it after work.
It's definitely one of those games. I remember doing this with like Horizon and God of War and stuff like that. It was like, that's kind of really all I can manage to do.
It's true. Although one day, I lied. I have played one of the game, and it's Star Wars Battlefront 2. I came home at like usually around Thursday. I'm just like really spent from the week.
Uh-huh.
So I came home on Thursday, and I was just like, I don't have enough energy to play The Last of Us Part 2. I will probably just like fall asleep from sheer just adrenaline overload if I play this
Intensity.
game right now.
Yeah.
So I played Star Wars Battlefront 2. And man,
nice calming, intense fighting video game.
But not even like going from that game, from Last of Us Part 2 to Star Wars Battlefront 2.
It's like cartoonish.
It's like, it's just a symphony of just farts comparison wise. It's just so base. And I'm just like, I can't feel super good playing it anymore because I just notice how inferior it is and how bad the story is in comparison to The Last of Us Part 2.
Yeah, I guess if you're comparing the way the story is being told, it's certainly not as good.
It's so inferior. It's still fun, which is the weird thing. It's still fun, but in comparison to this game, it's just completely in a different league. It's like the majors versus like single A.
Yeah.
It's a pretty intense difference. But that's the only other game I played.
Sweet. I also have been pretty enamored with getting through The Last of Us, mostly because like it's an interesting story and I'm enjoying it so far. The gameplay also feels pretty good, but I'm also just kind of trying to see how this thing wraps. Like, I'm getting farther along in the game, and I really don't want to run into some Twitter spoiler about how something turns out. So
I'm avoiding the internet.
Yeah, it's hard to do. It's hard to do. So I've mostly been playing that. The only other game that I've dipped my toes into recently, though, is this game called Fatum Betula, I think.
Fatum Betula.
Yeah, Fatum Betula. What
is this?
So this is like a indie game. I think it's made by one dude. Bryce Butcher, I think is his name. It's kind of hard to explain. Imagine if you got a disc in the mail that had like random scribblings on it, and it's like, hey, here's a game for PlayStation 1, play it. And it's like a creepypasta game.
Creepypasta game for PlayStation 1?
Yeah. Like just this, because so the game itself is very low poly and like looks like a PlayStation 1 game. It's just like kind of terrifying, or like unsettling in a deep way.
Why?
Why is it like this?
Why is it unsettling? What about it is unsettling?
The tone of it is spooky, for sure. Music is very spooky. It's just got like horror elements. Like the very beginning of the game, the way you start it is like you walk into this room and there's this little tree that's kind of hovering above the ground, and like the water's kind of coming up on the walls and stuff like that. Like you see the roots coming down, and there's like this note. The only thing you have in your inventory is this note about like a story of this woman who like stares into like the abyss, and like this monstrous creature comes out of it. And so that's like, you really don't have a lot of things to do other than read the note. And then there's like a hallway that you can look down that's just completely blank. And so you do that for a while, like maybe, 5 seconds or something. And that triggers this like creature to come out of the darkness of like this like circle looking thing with 2 eyes on either side of it and teeth going down the middle.
What?
And it comes out and like tells you how to play the game, essentially, of like, you have to water the tree, go and collect some kind of liquid, and then give it to the tree.
Okay, so now my question for you.
Yeah.
Do you hate yourself? Why are you playing this while you're also playing The Last of Us? Why would you do this to yourself?
It's a very different kind of scary than The Last of Us is. Like, Last of Us is like kind of depressing on a human level, but this game is like, so for example, there's a bunch of endings in this game. And one of the endings you get is like, you can go and fill up your little vial with oil and give that to the tree. And then like just this ending comes up out of nowhere, and it's like talking about like parasites and shit like that.
Uh-huh.
And there's just like this long like monologue about it, and then it just ends with like this almost like found footage looking stuff of like the grass and like a dead tree and shit like that. And it's just terrifying.
Okay.
And so it feels like a creepypasta, like all those old text chains or walls of text that you would find on like 4chan back in like 2010 or something like that.
Yeah.
It's like, I had this ghost in my closet or something.
Mm-hmm.
It's got a little, what's the dude who wrote fucking Call of Cthulhu? Lovecraft. It's a little Lovecraftian, just in the sense that like there's all these very unknown spooky things that like don't make any sense.
Mm-hmm.
Which is pretty cool.
Pretty cool.
Pretty cool.
That's
pretty
good.
ghoulish.
That's good.
So it's a different kind of scary to me.
Hmm.
And like a kind that I kind of enjoy, like in a weird way. I'm trying to think of something else that's like this, and it's hard to come up with just because it's so strange.
Is this like calming for you between playing The Last of Us?
A little bit. It's just like such a different experience that I enjoy it quite a bit. It reminds me of some Junjo Ito shit where like it's very confusing and the world kind of doesn't make sense and there's all this stuff going on. It's just like frightening on a lizard brain level where like the walls don't make any sense anymore and shit like that.
Okay, gotcha.
It's good stuff. I've enjoyed it. It's not a very long game. Like you can beat most of it and see a bunch of endings in under like an hour or two. And it reminds me a lot of like the like prototype games that I would see in school and shit like that, where like somebody has an idea and they just like execute on it really quickly. But definitely one of the better ones of those where it definitely seems thought out and this person has like polished it. Mm-hmm. So it's enjoyable for an indie game for sure. Also, the guy's like 19, I think. So
whoa,
cool. Yeah,
good for him.
Yeah, good for you, Bryce. Go Bryce.
Go Bryce.
It feels like a very cursed video game, which is fun.
Yeah, there you go.
It's an interesting concept for these sort of video games that like conceptually you could build some lore just about the video game itself, you know? Like you could build hype around it saying like, hey, I found this or something like that, right? Like build some terror around it, like the Blair Witch or something like that, where the marketing was very much like, we found all this stuff. Nobody knows who made it, blah, blah, blah.
I found this disc in the woods and I put it in my computer.
Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm. And it definitely like addresses the audience a couple times in like frightening ways. So that's pretty cool.
That's spooky.
Yeah, I liked it.
You're playing some intense games right now, man.
Yeah, I am. This, again, I don't know why this one it didn't really mess with me very much. I think it was just so different that...
Because you're just so numb from The Last of Us. You're just kind of nothing can affect me anymore.
So, that'll bring me up to the Podtimists thing that I have this week.
Let's hear it.
It is the wide array of video games that are available at any given time.
There's a lot out there.
And I like that there's like indie games like Fatum Betula that like just kind of come out of nowhere for me. This has happened, I feel like, a couple times this year where I'm just like, oh, what's this thing? And then it's like a cool experience that I hadn't ever heard of before up until that very point. So there's just a lot of shit happening like that pretty frequently. Mm-hmm. I definitely try to like stay on top of like major game releases. And that was, I feel like, a lot easier even like 10 years ago. Like you kind of knew what was coming out at any given time. Totally. But there are just so many people who have access to like game development kits, which is a good thing. Mm-hmm. Because a lot of weird ideas can be expressed, like this one.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, stuff like this has been happening fairly recently for me of like, oh, I didn't know about this game. Like this one, Monster Train came out of nowhere. That was the one that looked like Slay the Spire, kind of. Mm-hmm. Space Haven was another one that was just kind of came out of nowhere for me. World of Horror that came out earlier in the year. So yeah, I like how many video games there are. It's very cool. Or feels a little punk rocky in the sense that like anybody can do this if you just kind of put your mind to it. It's a lot harder than playing 3 chords over and over again, but like still.
Punk rock on blast.
Yeah, kind of.
Cool.
You got anything this week?
I do. My Podtimists thing of this week is a good bow. A good bow.
I've got a feeling I know why.
Yeah. So this is in trailers from before the game was released, so it's not a spoiler. But in Last of Us Part 2, you get a bow, and it feels real good. And I just love bows in video games. I feel like they got really good in like Skyrim. Skyrim on, they've all felt really good. Before then, they always felt pretty bad. I felt they just didn't translate well. But for some reason, Skyrim just opened up the secret sauce and just laid it on the video game. And ever since then, like every single game with a bow and arrow has just felt real good. Like Skyrim, Tomb Raider, Horizon, now The Last of Us. Yeah, they're all really good bow play.
I think Far Cry has a pretty good bow as well.
Far Cry does too. Yeah, I totally forgot that one. That's an excellent bow. So it's just something. It feels primal. That's what I like about it.
I think you're right that like there's something in Skyrim that they got right about like how long it takes to like lock the bow in place or the arrow in place, and then how long it takes to draw. And how fast it comes out if you draw it all the way back, and then the sound of it hitting other people and shit. I don't know.
And using the controller's vibration to kind of give you those cues to let you know, like, okay, you're at max capacity, time to let it go. It
also, like, I think physically makes sense for the triggers, right? Like, L2 to hold it up, R2 to draw the bow. And, like, in every game that I've played with a bow in recent memory, there's always that like combination of, I don't want to shoot the bow. I'm going to let off the
I'm going to let go of L2.
And it just sort of drops the bow down.
I'm done.
It always works.
Yep.
Like it feels natural.
It does. Yeah. No, it's great. Yeah. Because like L2, left hand is what I'm going to be holding the bow with. I'm going to be pulling back with my right.
Yeah.
So just, it translates very well. And I'm glad that video game programmers have figured out how to make that feel good.
It's true. Because like even in Ocarina of Time, I don't know if you remember this, but when you use the bow, it's like you press the button and Link just like machine gun rockets his arm back and it immediately pulls it to full strength, and you let go and it just like a bullet shoots out of him.
Yep. Doesn't feel as good. That does not feel as good.
Not at all.
Yeah, for a long time, bows were like, whatever in video games, but Skyrim opened up the door to bows, baby.
I can't remember who introduced the idea that bows are silent kills too, but that like it carries through in every video game, and that's always my weapon of choice. Like I don't want to go in loud, but I do want to be able to hit you from a little ways away.
It's the only weapon I've upgraded fully in Last of Us at this point. Dang. Is the bow.
Makes sense.
Sure do.
Cool. Well, with that, let us move on to our next and probably only thing.
Here we go. Spoiler alert.
It's the last segment of us.
The last segment.
I don't think we have really a name for this part of the show. We haven't done a game this new yet.
Call it a spoiler. Spoiler, don't listen if you haven't played the game segment.
We will probably talk about one spoilie in The Last of Us 2 that if you're a clever young person, you can probably figure it out what happens. But it does happen within the...
Spoiler chase.
It happens within the first couple hours of the game, and it is nearly impossible to talk about the rest of the game without talking about it. So
it also didn't get leaked online.
I'm pretty sure it got leaked online. So yeah, just be forewarned. If you don't want anything to do with it, just skip to the last part where we tell you to review our show. But
that's it.
That's it. But yeah, I think we'll probably talk about that and then refrain from everything else, I'd assume.
Yeah.
So yeah. Let's talk about The Last of Us 2. This is a pretty fresh game. I will attempt to keep it podtimistic, but I think there's also like some interesting things to go over that are not necessarily optimistic, but I think that we'll try and keep the tone that way.
Sure. Sounds good.
just on first glance, what are your like kind of high level opinions of the game? What, like, where are you at with it right now?
What are my high level opinions of the game?
Yeah, just like from a bird's eye view, how do you think about The Last of Us 2 right now?
I think it's excellent.
Yeah.
I think it's probably the most tense and intense game I might have ever played.
Yeah.
That's not a multiplayer game, right? Because there's a different level of intensity that happens when you play a multiplayer game. But as far as single player experiences go, this is probably the most tense, grabs you by the throat and doesn't let go for long segments of the game, and it just keeps on hitting you and hitting you and hitting you and hitting you with different crazy moments that require just all of your attention and just suck you in.
Yeah.
Just really, really good. Really good game.
Yeah.
Excellent so far, I'd say.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What about you?
I think it's really hard for me to talk about like in a concise way, because the gameplay itself, I think, is like very, very fine-tuned and plays really well. Mm-hmm. Like it feels good to shoot. The game also really hammers home that you should feel bad for killing and shooting. And so it
sure does.
It like doesn't make me feel good to play it all the time.
No, when I first killed a member of the WLF, the Wolves.
Yeah.
And I'm sneaking around and I kill them. And I like shoot them with like a silenced gun or something, and their friend sees them dead, and they say like, "Oh my God, Evie!" And like everybody has a name, and their friends will yell, "I'm like, oh God, no!" It's brutal.
It feels pretty bad.
Yeah, feels really bad.
Yeah, so like, I think we'll get into this in a little bit, but like the experience of playing. Like the whole experience of the game is hard to digest, and I think that's on purpose. Like they're trying to make you feel a certain way, and I don't know that I love the way it makes me feel, but I still keep playing it. So like I think there's just a difference in my moment to moment feeling of this game feels good, and when I stop playing it, I'm always like, God, this shit kind of bums me out a little bit. Mm-hmm. So I had like a bunch of notes about this game, and I think before we kind of get a little bit farther into it, there's a couple of things I wanted to highlight, because it's probably not going to make a lot of sense unless we talk about it. Mm-hmm. First of all, you should go read Chris Plant's article on Polygon about like The Last of Us and ludonarrative dissonance, because it lays it out incredibly well. So, but barring that, I'm going to try and summarize it to the best of my ability.
Okay.
Essentially, he talks about the origins of that phrase. We had talked about it a little bit on an episode a couple episodes ago.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we did.
And ludonarrative dissonance essentially refers to the tension between the game of what like the game is doing, like what happens when you press square or a trigger or an analog stick, and the story that game is telling you, right? This was a term coined by Clint Hawking back in 2007, and he was critiquing BioShock at the time, because BioShock had it was definitely telling a story, and a story that was like pretty fresh for games, but it was also telling it through shooting. And so like there was this kind of like grinding tension on like the story it was telling, and also the gameplay that it presented. Mm-hmm. Clint at the time even mentioned, like in the article, you can still go find it. It's an interesting read, especially given that it was written 13 years ago. He had made the distinction between a review of a game and a critique of a game. Like a review being like, you know, I'm going to give this game a 10 out of 10 or a 9 out of 10 or something like that. Mm-hmm. But a critique is more of like, what is the game telling me and how is it telling it to me? And he made the distinction that like you can have both, right? Like he had mentioned, I would give BioShock like a glowing review, but my critique of it's going to be a little bit harsher. And so I think since then, a bunch of publications and reviewers kind of took that ball and ran with it, especially in 2007, because like that was shortly after like the Call of Duty series was like blowing up. Mm-hmm. There's just a bunch of shooters at the time, and that was kind of all there was. And so a lot of people were talking about this phrase of ludonarrative dissonance, especially with like Chris Plant highlights the Uncharted series of like the first thing that happens in Uncharted is that Nathan Drake is like, hey, we're going to go explore and look for treasures. Oh, there's dudes coming. You know what I'm going to do? I'm a happy, lovable guy. I am going to kill about 20 people right now, though. That is the thing that's going to happen.
He really does. Yeah.
And that happens all throughout Uncharted, right? Like he gets really sad when somebody he cares about, dies or he loses or something like that, but also walks away from that and kills another 100 men. Like,
sure.
There is tension between those two things, is if you're like viewing the whole experience rather than just the game, right?
Totally.
And I think a lot of people are conditioned to not do that, especially if you I feel like grew up when we did. It's very easy to just take the game as like, well, here's the story part of the game, the cutscenes, and here's the game part of the game where I actually go and shoot dudes.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, they talk about that. Chris had mentioned that there's like that this phrase essentially almost got like used to death. It became like pop science kind of like everybody and their mom was talking about ludonarrative dissonance, and the phrase itself kind of lost a lot of meaning in the same way that like people will take a Myers-Briggs test and be like, oh, that's why I feel bad when Mercury is in retrograde or something like that.
I don't know if that's what Myers-Briggs talks about, but sure.
Myers-Briggs does not. It's the application of it, right? Like it's the people who say, oh, I was being mean to you earlier because I'm an INFJ or something.
Mm-hmm.
It sort of, I'm sure, started as an academic sort of thing, but then quickly got applied in a bunch of weird ways.
Yeah, it became something else.
Yeah, in a similar way that this also did.
Mm-hmm.
And so, as a result, about 5 years after, you started seeing a bunch of games like Dear Esther, Gone Home, what people would maybe call like walking simulators or something like that, where they put more of an emphasis on the story and essentially took out the shooting, right? Like a lot of those games are exploratory and like they focus way more on story.
Mm-hmm.
And even something like Braid that came out like a year after Clint wrote that article, you're jumping on heads like Mario and stuff like that, but the mechanics are much more tied to the story of the game. So, as a long-winded way of saying, it's sort of an interesting comparison to start drawing with The Last of Us 2, because whereas Uncharted sort of feels like one end of the ludonarrative dissonance spectrum, we're going to have interesting story that is very disconnected from the gameplay. Last of Us 2 is like, we're going to put these things right in alignment. We're going to keep all the killing and all the murdering, and we're going to make the story about that, like the effects that takes, and we're going to make you feel pretty fucking bad for doing that.
Yep.
And so it's like, I think Chris had even mentioned this in his article, that like the attempted alignment of that is kind of a painful experience, especially when you like look at it in this way of that they're intentionally trying to like make you feel a certain way given the context of the gameplay.
Yeah, I'd say it definitely strives to make you feel bad about it, but I do still feel that the gameplay and the story are somewhat different.
Mm-hmm.
I guess the story is what gives everything else context.
Definitely, yeah.
All the killing and everything, but it's I guess it shows that it is just a revenge story and how dark people can get. Yeah,
I that's definitely true, and I think that's them trying to align their story to the gameplay, right? Like them trying to bring, we already know how to shoot a bunch of people. Let's make a story about that and see how that goes. And I do think that's a pretty interesting experiment, because it is pretty rare in games for the player to have to reckon with the actions you're taking in the game.
Yeah.
Especially when it's the bare mechanics, right? I think it is true that games pretty frequently will sort of gloss over whatever gameplay they actually have, right? Like in Mass Effect, you kill a lot of people, but you're supposedly like a peace bringer, right? Like you can be this very good guy, and your renegade meter never goes down when you just like kill dudes.
Yeah, so long as they're bad.
Right.
Dudes.
Yeah. So like I think in something like Zelda, it makes a lot more sense because the creatures are like horrendous monsters, right? Like they're these things that don't really know morality or don't really, have the same sort of like human standard. They're just like slime creatures or something. Mm-hmm. And so it makes sense under that context for that to be the mechanics. But for a lot of games for a while, I feel like they have kind of been ignoring the actions that you're taking in the game.
Sure. At the same time, though, I think that the only reason that The Last of Us is able to kind of rectify that dissonance is because they've totally broken society in the game and what is
definitely
acceptable, whereas a game like Uncharted still exists within a world like our own.
Yeah, and like I definitely agree that it makes sense in The Last of Us 2. Like the violence makes sense. I think it's just I don't love the way it makes me feel.
No, and I think I would agree that that's the point.
Yeah, definitely.
Right? But at the same time, I think there is a difference between the gameplay being entertaining and still the story being engaging, and then making you think about like, oh, why did I have to do all those things I did as a character? So I guess it's trying to bridge the gap between you as a person playing the game and then you as kind of fulfilling the role of another being. Right, this fictional character, right? Because this game isn't about fantasy fulfillment, like so many games are. If it is for you, see a therapist, please,
you need to go talk
for
to
the love
somebody.
of God.
Yeah,
It's about engaging gameplay and then telling a story that just so happens to be exceptionally dark and unforgiving in a lot of ways. Right, it's like watching a really messed up movie, like a dark movie, like Heart of Darkness or The Joker, where characters
like Requiem from a Dream or some shit like that, where it's just painful to watch.
Exactly, where these characters do awful things, but it's still fascinating to kind of get a look into a realistic take on that dark side of humanity.
Yeah.
So I guess I could see how they're trying to bridge that gap, but still at the same time, it's hard to feel it completely, because at some points you still just feel like an unstoppable machine of death.
I think they also don't really give you any other option, right? Like, even if I wanted to see the rest of the story, there's no pacifist option in this game. Like,
right?
They're forcing you down a hallway and saying, like, these are the dudes you have to kill. Don't you feel bad about killing them? Like, well, when there's no other option, like, kind of, but it's for superficial and probably, frankly, in the short term, more painful reasons.
Yeah.
Like, I don't love hearing the enemies like call out each other's names and stuff like that when you kill them. It feels bad, but I think it would be a lot more impactful if you didn't have to do this. Like, if you kind of picked and choose where you needed to do it. This is kind of a weird comparison, but like, I think Undertale handles this a lot better, where like you can do the game without killing anybody.
Yeah.
It's hard, but it's an option available to you. And so when I played through Undertale, I didn't realize that was a thing until after the first boss, who's like essentially your monster mom, right?
Momster?
Yeah. And I felt awful for the rest of the game because I was like, I think there was a way that I could have not killed her.
I couldn't figure it out. I tried.
Yeah, it's in there, and I got it the second time. I don't remember what the solution was, but it's an option available to you. And so, like, that was really impactful because it was an experience that I had with the game rather than Ellie had with the people in the game, right? Like, it sort of allowed me to bridge the gap and sort of walk through the fourth wall into, like, I am in this game rather than, hey, you have to go control Ellie and shoot these guys. Don't you feel bad now?
Yeah, exactly. That's why it doesn't make me personally feel as bad. I still feel tense and, like, really just on high strung when I play the game.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily feel bad because it feels like I'm just kind of fulfilling a already set in stone story of Ellie doing these things, and I'm just kind of, I don't know, possessing her doing them.
Yeah.
Like the aquarium, no spoilers, but you do some fucked up shit there.
Yeah.
That felt awful, but at the same time, it's just like, that wasn't my decision. I was forced to do it to have to be able to finish the game and see the end of the story.
Yeah.
Right? Which makes the story something outside of me and outside of my control.
Yeah.
But there's really no other way to make a game like this where you're in control of the story like that without it being like an open world, multi-branching game.
Yeah. Or you give it like a couple of inflection points where you can choose whether or not to do something, right?
Sure.
It does open up a bunch of different doors, but
does that weaken the overall experience then?
That's kind of the question.
That's the
right?
question. I enjoy it being kind of like a novel.
I agree.
Reading instead of reading and feeling someone's experiences, you're more in control. I don't know, still feeling and experiencing their story, but just kind of controlling them in the world instead of just reading them in the world, right?
Yeah. Some of the critiques that I would expect from somebody who's like who really subscribes to the idea that like ludonarrative dissonance is a bad thing would say about that is that the game sort of pulls a punch in that case. Like, because you're just experiencing this like nearly novel or movie, it sort of takes away what games can bring as like something specific to the medium, right? Like games are good because it allows a player choice. And in so taking that away, it's kind of just telling you a story and then saying, okay, go kill these guys and feel bad, and now we're going to tell you some more of the story. Whereas like one of the games that Clint Hawking made, Far Cry 2, is all about these like parts of the game where you get to have a story that isn't necessarily programmed into the game. Emergent gameplay, I think he called it, or something, where you'll run into the desert or something like that, and there'll be a car that shows up of these two dudes, and then like one of them will fight with another guy, and then like one of your allies will show up and try to defend you, and like you'll try and defend yourself. Maybe you die or get close to dying, and then your ally comes up and saves you, and then you have to run away or something like that, where none of this is really programmed to the game as a story beat, but it's something that you experienced and is only yours, right? And so even in Undertale, right? Like you can really choose how you want to play that game out of the context. Of course, the scale is different, right? Like, of course, this is a very different game as far as like being able to program in that many options. But I think I agree that if, say, the game was 10 hours long rather than like the 30, I think it is, I think they could have done that, where if they were trying to tell this story about like revenge, I think they probably could have done it pretty well, and it still would have been a pretty brutal story, right?
Sure.
Like the big spoiler of the first couple hours is that Joel gets killed. Immediately after that, I was also like, okay, let's go fucking get these guys, right? Like that was my immediate thought too. And the game takes you down this road where it's painful to do that, and I think inevitably at some point you as the player will be like, I think I'm over this. I think I don't want to do any more revenge. But I think, to your point, it does make a more effective like novelization or movie where you're kind of being taken along this track, and it's an interesting one for sure. Like, I enjoy that story. It's interesting and different and not something that's always told. But as far as being a good representation of the medium, good God, that is pretentious. A good representation of the medium, I think it kind of pulls a punch there.
Sure.
We should name this segment Guys Smell Their Own Farts, about the thoughts on video games. Good Lord. Good God.
Yeah,
man.
I guess I'm not as concerned about it being a representation of the uniqueness of the power of video games as I am just about an entertaining, engaging story that showcases how engaging and interactive a story can be through a video game. Yeah. Which there are a lot of people still don't believe that that's possible. Like, I don't need lots of different branching pathways, lots of different, choices or options or anything like that. Sometimes that's overwhelming for me. And I want to experience the story. I want to experience good gameplay, and that's about it. And I think that's what Naughty Dog does better than everybody else, right? Their whole entire thing for a long time has been kind of giving you that Hollywood experience of a certain type of story in the video game form. Yeah. So in a lot of ways, their whole philosophy is built around ludonarrative dissonance, because what is more ludonarrative dissonant than a movie where the hero kills 500,000 people to save one person who he has a romantic relationship with? So I think that's speaking to a larger shortcoming of media in general, in that there's always the good guy can get away with killing and doing evil so long as it's framed as he is doing it to bad people. Yeah. I feel like that's just media in general. It's not unique to video games. It's just all media. I think this game is trying to poke at that idea, right? Like, it's trying to poke and say, like, maybe not though. Like, Yeah.
That's probably
and
not a good thing.
They're trying to poke holes in it and show you that, yeah, revenge is bad. Going out and getting revenge for someone you love is bad because everybody has a unique story. Everybody's a star of their own film.
Yeah.
Right? Everyone's a star of their own video game made by Naughty Dog. So yeah, it is just a good way of making you become more invested in your actions in the game.
Yeah.
I don't think it's necessarily bad or detrimental that it does that.
Yeah. I think this probably comes down to how somebody interprets the value of these games.
Sure.
Like, are you okay with being pushed down a story, right? Like, are you okay with being forced down this kind of like way of thinking or this, story? I think there are folks who are okay with that.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think especially I'm pretty used to this, having played games all my life. Like, this is a pretty common experience, right? Like, you play a bunch of game, cuts to a cutscene that's entirely different and outside of everything that you've experienced so far. And then they drop you in somewhere else and you play something else. Mm-hmm. And that's not how this game plays. Like, there's a lot of story beats that make you feel very much a part of this world.
Mm-hmm.
But I think I do get the critique that this is like kind of a painful experience as they try to realign the story and the gameplay.
Mm-hmm. Totally. I agree.
It's hard to experience it like this. And I know that like a lot of people kind of shit on Uncharted for that same reason, right? Of, you know, this game doesn't make any fucking sense. Like the lore of the story doesn't make any sense when you actually examine it, right? Mm-hmm. In the same way that like Indiana Jones doesn't, right? Like, yeah, it's
an action. It's just meant to be fun. It's just meant to be fun.
It is. But I think there is danger in presenting murder as fun, right?
Sure.
That can be sort of a thing that isn't always treated with the sort of like intensity that is the reality of the world, right? Mm-hmm. Like that's a hard thing to do, but this is the flip side where they've aligned both of them and it's still kind of a painful experience.
Yeah.
On one end you get the deference to murder, mm-hmm. and the story is intense and painful, or you get where murder is treated as sort of candy that Nathan Drake does, and the story of the game.
Nathan Drake kills thousands of people a month and sleeps like a baby at night.
Yeah, and he feels great because he's got his wife with him.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, it's just it's hard on either end, and so I
feel like this is speaking to a larger ill of society and humanity.
Definitely.
Just in general.
I think as folks who consume the medium, we should like hold the games to a high standard, right? Like, you want to hold them to this ideal of like, you know, it doesn't have to be this, because there are games that don't include violence that are incredible, right? Mm-hmm. The Outer Worlds last year was so goddamn good, and there was no shooting in that game.
Outer Wilds,
you're right. Outer Worlds was the shooting one.
They had a lot of shooting in that one, I was about to say.
Not that one. Outer Wilds was no shooting.
So
and
many
also
games
very,
nowadays.
And so like these games exist, and I think like it's any of the critiques that you'll see online of people who kind of are down on this game, I think are coming at them from the perspective of like, there are so many talented people in Naughty Dog, and the people who write these stories are so good and so talented, and their characters are so robust and interesting, and it's not a shame, but like they're making a kind of game that is hard to play, makes people feel bad. Mm-hmm. On purpose, right? But I think the critique is sort of coming down on, I don't know that I like that, is usually the feeling. Or I don't think that that's what games should be or something.
Yeah, no, it's just like, I think on the last podcast you told me that you would shoot somebody and the dog would go over and nuzzle them. And I was just like, that doesn't need to be in a game.
No.
I still feel that way.
Yeah,
I don't ever need to see that in life.
It's pretty painful. I could have not seen that, and the game still would have hit me just as hard, right?
Yeah, and
I think it's they're making the world feel real when people die. Mm-hmm. It's bad, and it hurts, and it's painful.
It's like it's like grabbing you by the head and forcing you to look in the mirror and being like, "Is this what you want with your ludonarrative dissonance? Is this what you want? You want to go back to Nathan now, don't you?"
I think a lot of people are seeing that, right? Like, they are saying, like, right now, this is a really hard game to play. And it is easier to play Nathan Drake if you can suspend your disbelief. I think that some people, when they play Uncharted, aren't able to do that, though. Mm-hmm. They aren't able to say, like, okay, well, he shoots the dudes. I guess it's just one of those games, right? It's pop art, right? Like, Uncharted is pop art, where it's not meant to examine itself all that hard. Mm-hmm. And I've definitely played through all the Uncharted's, and I've definitely enjoyed them. Like, it's the same way that, like, Transformers is pop art, right?
Yeah.
I would say Uncharted's probably a little bit better than
I'd say
Transformers as far as medium to medium goes. But it's an experience where you're not meant to be engaging super hard. Mm-hmm. Like, it's supposed to be just a fun thing that you do. Mm-hmm. And I definitely get that, especially like coming from the academic background of like making games and shit like that. Like, once you kind of turn that part of your brain on that is trying to figure out what the people are trying to tell you, and what they're trying to tell you sometimes doesn't make any sense. Mm-hmm. It can be hard to ignore that. It can be hard to say, like, I'm just going to say fuck it, right? It's possible, and like it's something that you definitely have to choose to do sometimes.
Sure. Okay. I guess my question then is, are games entertainment? Is that the end goal of games? Are they supposed to be entertaining? Because if they're supposed to be entertaining, how can they also be telling a story and being realistic and being giving you that experience of choice and morality and everything like that? Like, that is intrinsically not entertaining. So what's the end goal for games then?
Yeah, I guess like I would say that the experience of entertainment doesn't have to come from a place of telling like a very sad story, right? Like, I found Outer Wilds to be a pretty entertaining experience, despite the fact it wasn't glitzy and glammy, right? Like, it was the satisfaction of the game comes from exploration and puzzle solving and kind of like your own curiosity, which is I think something that is pretty specific to games. Like, curiosity and puzzle solving and exploration specifically are like motifs that you can put in games that like pay back tenfold, right? When you're wandering around the world in Breath of the Wild, it's such a satisfying experience because you have not very much telling you where to go, and it's your own sort of like interest in the world that drives you forward a lot of the time.
Sure.
There is a story, but the entertainment as far as I felt from that game and Outer Wilds too was like, I'm curious what's going on in this world. I want to find out what's happening.
Sure.
And that to me was entertaining. I think if you're putting the model that games have to shoot, then it would be hard to be entertaining if that's your only option. But there are games that don't do that and are still entertaining to me.
Sure. I guess my counter argument is that most people don't find puzzles and exploration and curiosity entertaining. Breath of the Wild, sure, but there's a lot of fighting in that game too.
Sure, fair.
Whereas the games that are selling you on puzzles, curiosity, exploration, those don't sell as well. And that's going towards broad entertainment, because I feel that entertainment, there is an element of shutting your brain off because you're tired, because you're stressed out and you want an escape. So how much escapism then are we going to allow for games? Yeah,
and like I definitely hear that, and I think my point in bringing it up was that I don't know that should be the goal, right? I get why they made Uncharted, because it is a very entertaining game and it will sell, right? Like, it's going to sell because people, I think, crave that. Here we go. I'm going to sniff a big old fart.
I'm ready.
I don't know that that's what I need out of art, right? Like,
that was my next question. Or how much do we want video games to be art as opposed to just entertainment? Because I don't think art and entertainment are the same thing at all, personally.
I kind of do.
I disagree.
You can make an entertaining movie that's also pretty artful.
I feel like it's going to hit different people differently.
Definitely.
And I don't think people who are going to see it as art are also... Maybe people who see it as will see it as entertainment, but people who only see it as entertainment are not going to see it as art.
Oh, sure. Yeah, no, we don't need those people. That's fine.
We don't need...
No,
put
that's
them in a spaceship, send them to the sun.
No, we don't need that. But I just I don't care if the person who's going to it for entertainment thinks it's art. That's fine. I don't need that.
Okay, I see what you're saying.
But you can do both. I think there's plenty of movies and plenty of books that are steeped in entertainment values, but are pretty artsy and artistic and have something to say.
Mm-hmm. So do things that are only for entertainment have no value then?
I wouldn't say that either.
Okay.
But I think when I'm looking at the medium, I want somebody to have something to say. When I'm looking for a unique and new experience, right? Mm-hmm. And I agree, right? Like, I play fucking Slay the Spire every night. There's nothing being said in that game. It's just the gameplay is fun for me.
Ding boy.
It's I think when you're putting out this game that PlayStation's like, this is our biggest fucking game of the year. It's one of the best ones. I still think Last of Us 1 is one of the best games, period, right?
Sure.
Because it pushed the medium forward so hard with like the writing, the dialogue. Like, I feel like a lot of the times the writing in video games is just like, here is what I am doing. Here's what I am thinking. I'm going to speak out loud and tell other characters what I am thinking.
Star Wars Battlefront 2 is such a bad offender of that.
Yeah, like they don't know how to like write dialogue in the way that a lot of other mediums do, but this one does. And Last of Us 1 also does that, where somebody will say something and you kind of have to read into what they're saying, right? Like, they don't tell you everything, and they kind of trust the audience to understand what's happening in that interaction. That doesn't happen very often, and so there's a lot of value there. And so when coming from that first one that I liked quite a bit in the way that they told story, and there's clearly so many talented people working on it, I was like excited to see what they had to say on this one. I guess I wasn't coming into it with the idea that this game is pop art.
Sure.
That they're going to try and tell a pretty compelling story and have something kind of groundbreaking to say.
I feel like they made that pretty clear with the marketing and everything like that.
Yeah, and that's not to say this game doesn't do that. I think it does, but I think it does it in a way that's hard to experience, and I really wouldn't want all games to do this.
It's really just like shoving your face in the dirt.
Yeah. In the same way that like Apocalypse Now is not a very fun movie to watch towards the end, right?
Yeah, it's painful.
It's a painful movie, and it's not something that's easy to experience. But again, with movies, it's like, we're going to show you some stuff.
Yeah.
Versus games could be, you're going to experience some stuff.
But sometimes that stuff's good for you. Like, why do we eat bitter things? Why do we eat sour things? Right? There is some pleasure in there.
Yeah, and I think that's probably on purpose. Like, the game later at some point mentions that pretty explicitly, of like, you know, you're at your best when you're scared and fearful and all this sort of shit. And like, I think that Naughty Dog is trying to explore that space. But I think it's hard to play, man. Like, I want these people who are so talented at making it to maybe have a little bit of a brighter take.
I don't think they expected 2020 to happen.
Nobody did. Yeah, I still like this game very much. I like this game a lot. I think when critiquing it, though, it just sort of brings up a bunch of other questions that I kind of I've struggled to answer so far.
Sure. No, I hear you. Those good points.
I would love to gush about this game for just a second, just so we can like end on some podtimistic notes.
Sure, let's hear it.
The story and like the personal interactions between people in the game is just so fucking phenomenal. Like, the interactions between Ellie and Dina are like genuinely moving for me. Did you get into the guitar store with Ellie and Dina?
Yeah, I explored everything. Half of the game is fighting people, and then the other half is scavenging, and I'm a scavenger extraordinaire.
Yeah, I also enjoyed this part of the game. I quite a bit, like, just rooting around. Especially, I haven't even mentioned this yet, but like, I live in Seattle, so many of these sites are like, oh shit, that's where that is, or they tried to make this look like that, or something.
How long until there's a Rustin coffee pop up at a Starbucks?
I mean, sort of, right? Like, they have coffee shops. It's wild.
No, they have Rustin coffee, and it's the same font as Starbucks.
It's definitely wild. So like, exploring the city as somebody who lives here is a pretty unique experience. So I really enjoy that they tried to make the game model Seattle pretty well. So it's fascinating wandering around in there. Sometimes a huge bummer, because like, I haven't seen downtown in a couple of months. So I'm like,
it could be this way.
This could be as fucked as it is down there right now. Yeah, so that's really good. The exploring is great. To the point before, when Ellie plays Take Me On by Aha for Dina, that got me, bro. That got me.
Yeah, I'm definitely learning some of these songs on guitar right now.
Yeah, absolutely.
And when she starts playing that song that Joel sang for her and then stopped after like the first verse, just can't go on anymore.
It's brutal. Yeah.
So bad.
Yeah, I think that's all really good. The fucking guitar simulator out of nowhere, like, that's one of the best parts of the game.
It's pretty good. It's pretty
It's
good.
pretty good.
Each part of the touchpad does a different string.
Yep.
And it's pretty accurate.
It's pretty accurate.
Impressive.
I've seen a bunch of people like finger picking on the front of the PlayStation control. Yeah, like it's obscene. People are covering songs in Last of Us 2. It's so interesting.
That's wild.
It also looks phenomenal, just graphically.
Oh, it's amazing graphics, yeah.
Naughty Dog has mocap down.
Oh, they kill
especially like facial interactions and shit like that. It's just crazy.
Their facial expressions are great.
Yeah.
So good. And the gameplay is real good.
Gameplay real good. Shooting feel good. Crafting feel good.
Mm-hmm.
Upgrading gun feel good.
Right. And I've never felt more conflicted, I think, about any character as I have about Joel.
Yeah. I think that's a testament to the writing and how they present him and all that sort of shit.
It's just like, I was sad when he died, but I'm also like, he kind of fucking deserved it at the same time.
He really fucked it up.
He really fucked up.
In the first one, spoilers for the first Last of Us, but the main conflict of the game is Joel takes Ellie to maybe develop a cure. They say, actually, Ellie's got to die if that's going to be the case. And Joel's like, actually, fuck all this. I'm going to kill all who you buy. And then takes her out. Mm-hmm. Dude, that's a pretty shitty move.
Yeah, but I think it's a testament to how interesting his character is, that you understand
definitely.
where he's coming from. It's just like, you can't have another daughter die. He just can't do it. He can't do it. He would have to die too. He'd rather die than have her die. Yeah. That's what it is. It's crazy.
And like the way they got there in the story, I got it, right? Like I understood that. And definitely felt it when it was there of like, oh, I don't know if I can handle that again. Because that's the first fucking thing that happens in the game is his daughter gets killed. It happens within the first 45 minutes, just enough time for it to be so painful, but not to really overstay its welcome as far as the intro goes.
Yeah.
Like the whole game is steeped in that experience. Mm-hmm. So good God. Yeah. It's like by the time you get to the end, you're like, yep, I get it. Probably not the best decision, but I get it. Mm-hmm. But from the outside looking in, and especially with like the hindsight of like, here's a new game, you're playing mostly as Ellie. Joel kind of feels like this removed person now, like you're not playing as him. So the story is a little bit out there. It breeds a certain amount of like distance. And so you're like, well, I don't know, dude. Yeah. I don't know about that one.
No, he fucked up. You get it. And he was still good to Ellie. That's the thing.
That part of the story, I think, is probably the strongest in this one. Of like, what makes somebody good. Mm-hmm. Like, I think they hit the nail pretty hard on that one.
I'd say it comes down on nobody's really good. Everybody's
Definitely.
shades of gray.
That's the take they're doing. Yeah,
that's what I like about it. That's what I kind of see life as, right? That's why I like things like Game of Thrones, or one of my favorite movies is Children of Men. Like I love all that kind of morally gray areas where it's like that person did something really awful, but they're also a really great person in all these other ways. I think it's just really interesting and really human in that we're capable of awful things, but capable of really good things at the same time.
True.
It's real shit.
So yeah, I think they do a pretty good job with that part of the story. There's other parts of it that I think are handled a little bit less well, but I think they nail that one pretty good. The characters are good, man. I think whoever does the work on that is just, they need a raise. Mm-hmm. Everybody feels like a pretty real person.
Yeah, everybody's fleshed out well.
Yeah.
Very
even,
interesting.
Fucking side characters and shit. Even the bad guys that you have to shoot real good.
They all have
feels
personalities.
Bad, man.
They're all people. Feels bad, man.
Yeah. So I don't know that we necessarily need to have a follow up on this when like spoilers are around and abundant, because I'm sure there will be plenty of recaps of that on other pods and shit. But figured we'd give the Podtimistic take on this one.
We're doing it.
Got academia abound, bro.
Smelling.
Wake up and smell the farts.
Chase is smelling farts over here.
Do you have anything else you need to say about The Last of Us 2?
I've talked enough about this game now.
Yeah, fair enough. So, we haven't asked it in a little while, but we do have a handful of new listeners, and so I figured I'd throw it out again. Give that show a review on iTunes if you got a chance. Helps us out a lot.
Oh, Yeah. So you can give us a 5-star and say they smell the best farts. We'll take it as long as you get the 5 stars.
The stink of their farts is just so good.
So good.
Or at least they sound like they enjoy them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. They seem like they really enjoy their own farts, so good for them.
Good for them. Will not listen again. Yeah, it helps us out a lot, so please do that.
Mm-hmm.
We have a Twitter, but, fuck it.
But
fuck that Twitter.
Fuck the Twitter?
We're episode 20 now,
What does
David.
that mean?
We don't need Twitter anymore.
We're beyond Twitter at this point?
Yeah, we're a Facebook-only podcast now.
Do we have a Facebook?
No.
I was about to say, I didn't think we did.
No, we do not.
Maybe we just need an Instagram.
I'm going to start a video game Podtimist MySpace, and I will put all of our newest followers on our top 8.
What about a video game Podtimist TikTok?
Yeah, I am going to have to learn to shake my ass if we do have that, though. Which I think I'm a little old to be shaking it on TikTok.
There's
but
plenty of millennials on TikTok, Chase.
You would be surprised. There is not a ton of millennials making content out there.
They're there. They're out there.
Yeah. Most of them make content about being fucking old on TikTok. There's a lot of that on there.
Yeah, that feels bad.
Oh well.
Feels
bad. There was a turn recently of Gen Z got whiff of some millennial weakness and just started bouncing on it. I was like, oh, this feels horrible. I don't want to be here anymore. Mom, come pick me up. Gen Z's making fun of me.
We're not the young generation on the block anymore. At least we have apartments and aren't just leashing off of our parents still Gen Z on blast.
We can't do this, David. We can't do this. We got to be better.
What are we going to do?
We're adults now. They can have their moment where they shit on the generation above them. It's our turn to take the shit.
So can't we all just shit on the baby boomers, though? Come on, guys.
I think that is still on the menu. I think that is a regularly scheduled program.
That unifying rallying point for all of us, please.
I think so.
Okay, good.
We got to be able to take the lumps from Gen Z while they're growing up, and then we'll be chill after that. They're pissed off about us being random weirdos who grew up in a weird time.
They're just pissed off because they're teenagers.
That's okay.
That's really what it comes down to.
We're not anymore. We don't have to be pissed off about being teenagers anymore.
They can do what they do. Take their parents' minivan to the homecoming dance. That's fine.
That's fine.
Gen
well,
Z.
not this year. Sorry, guys.
Oh yeah, the Corona dance got canceled. Sorry.
We're here for you, Gen Z. I'll get made fun of. It doesn't feel great.
We're here for you. Just do your thing. We'll do ours. Or we'll be separate. We still love you.
We still love you. Let me give you some life lessons from somebody who's lived through these video games already.
Mm-hmm.
We don't need to make fun of what somebody else buys, what console they buy. We don't need to do that.
Yeah, we've been through this one.
We ain't got to do this again.
It doesn't make any sense. Why? Who cares? Buy what you want to buy.
5 years down the road, everybody will either have what they want or don't, and it's chill.
Mm-hmm.
It's fine.
Mm-hmm.
League of Legends is for babies, though.
Still for babies.
It's still for babies.
Can we check the clock? Is League of Legends still for babies? Yes. Yes, it is.
Pulling it up. Yep, actually still for babies.
Still for babies.
Got confirmation on that one.
What is the baby generation right now? Is that Generation Alpha or something?
You mean people who are like 10 years old right now?
Yeah, let's say birth 10.
Those are
Generation LOL.
Punished generation. Big generation.
Big.
Solidest generation.
Which one is it?
I think it's Punished Gen is what it's going to be.
Punish Gen.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, in a lot of ways, the new generation are the children of millennials. So could they be punished millennials? Darth
Millennials. Jesus.
My parents tried to stop climate change, but the boomers stopped them. Now I gotta deal with the consequences.
It's cursed millennials.
Millennials. Oh, God. Oh, it's so sad.
Trillennials, double millennials, extra millennials.
No, none of those were good.
Baby boobers.
Baby boobers? Do you hear yourself?
We're doing outro quality content right now. I need to hear some gaming wisdom before we get there.
The grand baby boomers? Because if we're the children of the baby boomers, then our children would be the baby boomers' grandchildren, right?
Neo baby boomers.
Neo. Neo baby boomers. Neo boomers.
Neo boomers. That's kind of a powerful phrase.
It is. A little scary.
David, I need gaming wisdom to take me out of this Last of Us 2 pit.
Oh, I'm in the darkness.
Here, hold on. I'll ring a bell to get you out.
Please.
Ghost of Tsushima is coming out like next month. I bet that game's gonna be fucking cool.
I'm ready for it. Or is the ludonarrative dissonance gonna be too much for you, Chase?
We'll see, bro. I mean, it's a game about being a deadly ninja, so it's probably gonna be fine.
Yeah, that's true.
I can spit one out. I can try and spit one out.
If you got one, go for it, baby.
I don't, but I can try and think of one.
Fine, let's have a competition. Friendly competition. Who can get the video game wisdom first?
Friendly competition. Sonic's ass is good.
That's not wisdom. That's a statement.
What do you mean that's not fucking wisdom?
That's not wisdom. That's an opinion piece.
That's a fact, David.
All right, now you're...
Sonic has a dump truck ass. Fact.
You are sounding like our president's Twitter feed right now. The saddest thing is I wouldn't be surprised if he tweeted something like that out. Sonic has a dump truck ass. Fact.
That would be one good day in 2020 if that happened. That would be one fucking good thing. Wouldn't make him any better, but it would be one good thing.
My video game wisdom is more of a video game plea to humanity this week.
Oh, good. Good. Something to take us out of the sad pit.
The Last of Us 2 really didn't bring me down much farther than I already was. So can we all just agree to try and make the second half of 2020 the best half of 2020 there ever was?
We need Katamari Damacy 2.
Right?
Someone fucking release it.
Because it is almost the second 20 of 2020 right now. We're almost halfway through.
We were in the first 20. There's another one coming.
2020 Part 1. Now we're in 2020 Part 2. And hopefully it's not as dark as The Last of Us Part 2.
Hopefully it's not about revenge.
I implore everybody to bring some sort of kindness into the world every day, whether it's a compliment that's cannot be construed as harassment of any sort, please.
Yeah, I mean, good fucking caveat.
A real genuine compliment, or it's just a good act or deed of kindness, of selflessness, for your fellow man or woman or animal.
Or person.
Or whatever you want. Or person, exactly. Just try and do some good. That's my video game plea to humanity for the week.
Fair. All right, let's model it. First, genuine compliment. Sonic, your dump truck ass today is looking fantastic.
That is an example of a bad compliment, actually, Chase.
Okay, let me try again. Sonic, the vibe that you are producing today makes me feel very good. Thank you for bringing your A game.
That's much better. Much better.
It was because of his dump truck ass, though.
You can have that internal feeling.
Okay.
That's okay.
I will not tell him.
Reckon with it. Talk to your therapist about it.
Well,
right? Maybe look deep into your soul about why that exactly is what gave you that vibe. But providing a compliment to someone else is always welcome.
Okay. So there's that good deed.
Yes. Go for it.
Sonic, may I carry your left cheek? It seems gigantic and must be tiring for you to carry around.
That's harassment. That's harassment.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sonic, can I collect the power emeralds today for you? That seems like a lot for you on your plate. I bet it would be cool if I could collect the Chaos Emeralds instead and then bring them back to you so you can go supersonic.
Yeah, she's like, Sonic, I know you're tired from fighting Dr. Robotnik.
Or Eggman.
Dr. Eggman. I'm the expert
Robotnik
gamer,
is
guys.
Definitely his name, though.
Okay, good. And so I was just wondering if you want me to grab a couple of coins for you on my way to work today.
I just caught you. Gamer card revoked.
What happened?
Sonic doesn't have coins. He has rings.
Rings. I mean,
God.
what is a Sonic ring except a gold coin with the center taken out?
You can try and defend it.
That's some bullshit.
The whole world doesn't hurt it.
I will defend it. So then Sonic would say, David, thank you for that. I only collect gold rings, but I understand what you're saying, and that was just an honest mistake, because a ring does look like a coin just with the center taken out. So if you'd like to get me some gold rings on your way to work, I would definitely appreciate that. But if you get gold coins, please bring them to Mario. He's across the hall in room 405.
That would make my second 20 so much better than the first one. We're done with that shitty first 20. Let's toss it out.
The second 20 is going to be my number 120 of 2020.
I dearly hope that is the fucking case. If this half of 2020 was the good one, I'm going to be fucking mad. If we were like in December, man, you remember enjoyable, joyful game, The Last of Us Part 2? Oh man, those were the days.
Don't you speak this into existence. You know our podcast has a tendency to do that.
It'll be fine. They'll put out Katamari Damacy 2. They'll put out a video of Mario collecting a bunch of coins and doing a dab or something, and it'll be fine.
Mario doing a dab.
You know Shigeru Miyamoto. He's hip with the kids of 2016.
I think we need this. I agree. We need this.
So that's our optimistic podcast this week.
It was a lie.
It was all a lie. You've been fooled into listening to a just kind of normal optimistic podcast.
A normal, semi-optimistic podcast that talks about really dark and intense themes and then smells its own farts for a good 45 minutes.
I love the way they smell. I guarantee it.
I know you do.
Okay, great. See you next week, everybody. Goodbye.